The Wyoming Territory in 1879 was a land of jagged horizons and merciless winds. Red Hollow, a speck of a town clinging to the edge of nowhere, was where hope came to wither. Its streets were choked with dust, its people hardened by the sun, and its laws bent to the will of whoever carried the most lead. Caleb Holt was one such man, a cowboy whose name was whispered in saloons from Cheyenne to Laramie. His eyes, gray as a storm cloud, saw everything, and his hand was quick enough to answer any challenge. But Caleb wasn't a hero. He was a man running from ghosts, and Red Hollow was just another place to hide. It was late spring when the traders rolled into town, their wagons creaking under the weight of stolen goods and darker cargo. They called themselves merchants, but their eyes gleamed with the hunger of wolves. At the center of their spectacle was a woman, bound and defiant, her auburn hair catching the light like fire. Her name was Eliza Kane, and the traders claimed she was a virgin bride, a prize to be auctioned to the highest bidder. The townsfolk gathered, drawn by the promise of something new to break the monotony of their lives. Caleb stood at the back of the crowd, his hat pulled low, his fingers twitching near the revolver at his hip. He had no interest in owning anyone. His heart was too scarred for such nonsense. But something about Eliza's unyielding stare held him. She wasn't crying, wasn't begging. Her green eyes burned with a fire that reminded him of someone he'd buried long ago. The bidding was a circus of greed and cruelty. Men shouted offers, their voices dripping with lust and liquor. A rancher named Amos, drunk and swaggering, tossed out a bid of $3, laughing as if the price was a joke. The crowd roared, but no one topped it. The traders, eager to move on, accepted. Eliza's fate was sealed for the price of a cheap bottle of whiskey. Caleb's blood boiled. He'd seen enough of the world's ugliness to know where this would lead. Before he could stop himself, he stepped forward. $3.01, he called, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. The square fell silent. Amos cursed, his face red, but he was too broke to counter. The traders smirked, snatching Caleb's coin pouch without a second thought. Eliza was his, though he hadn't wanted her. Not like that. He approached the platform, his boots crunching on the dry earth. Eliza's wrists were raw from the ropes, but she held her chin high. He cut her bond with his knife, careful not to meet her gaze. "Come on," he muttered, leading her to his horse. The crowd parted, their whispers trailing like vultures. Caleb didn't look back. They rode west, toward his cabin nestled against a rocky ridge where the wind sang its lonesome song. The silence between them was heavy, broken only by the creak of the saddle and the thud of hooves. When they reached the cabin, the sky was bruised with twilight. Caleb dismounted and turned to her. "You're free," he said, pointing to the endless plains. "Go where you want. I didn't buy you to keep you." Eliza's eyes narrowed, sharp and searching. "Free." Her voice was low, edged with bitterness. "A woman alone out here is as good as dead. You know that." He didn't argue. She was right. The West didn't care for the weak, and freedom was a word that meant little without a gun or a name to back it up. "Stay, then," he said. "Your choice." She stayed. The first weeks were a dance of caution. Eliza was no wilting flower. She hauled water, chopped wood, and cooked with precision that spoke of survival, not domesticity. But she watched Caleb like a hawk, waiting for the moment he'd reveal some hidden cruelty. He kept his distance, sleeping in the barn, leaving the cabin to her. He told himself it was respect, but deep down, he knew it was fear. Fear what she stirred in him, a warmth he hadn't felt since the days before blood stained his hands. One night, a scream tore through the quiet. Caleb was out of the barn in seconds, his revolver drawn, expecting rustlers or worse. He found Eliza in the cabin doorway, her face pale, a butcher knife trembling in her hand. A rattlesnake lay dead at her feet, its head cleaved clean off. "You all right?" he asked, holstering his gun. She nodded, her breath unsteady. "I hate snakes." He almost smiled. "You handled it." Her eyes met his, and for a moment, something passed between them. Not trust, not yet, but a spark of understanding. "I've handled worse," she said, her voice softer now. He didn't ask what she meant. He didn't need to. The West was a forge, and those who survived it carried their scars in silence. Summer brought heat that baked the earth to clay. Caleb and Eliza fell into a rhythm, sharing the work of survival. She began to talk, her words coming in fragments. A childhood in Virginia, a father lost to war, a mother to fever, a journey west that ended in betrayal. She'd been sold to the traders by a man she'd trusted, a preacher with a silver tongue and a heart black as coal. Caleb listened, offering little of his own past. His story was a shadow he wasn't ready to face. But he noticed things about her. The way her hands moved when she sewed, deft and sure. The way she hummed softly when she thought he wasn't listening. The way her laughter, rare as rain, lit up the cabin. She was beautiful, not in the polished way of city women, but like the land itself, wild, unyielding, and breathtaking. One evening, as they sat by the fire, she asked, "Why'd you do it, Caleb? Why pay for me?" He stared into the flames, the question digging into old wounds. "Couldn't let Amos have you, or any of them. So you spent $3 to play savior?" Her tone was sharp, but her eyes held a flicker of warmth. $3.01, he corrected, and the ghost of a smile crossed his face. She laughed, a sound that cut through the walls he'd built. For a moment, they were just two people, not a cowboy and a bought bride, and the world felt less heavy. Trouble came with the first chill of autumn. A rider appeared at the cabin, his horse lathered from a hard ride. His name was Jericho, a man from Caleb's past, lean and sharp-eyed, with a smile that promised blood. They'd ridden together years ago, back when Caleb was less discerning about his company. Jericho claimed he was just passing through, but his gaze lingered on Eliza, appraising her like a predator. "Nice place you got, Holt," Jericho said, leaning against the porch rail. "Didn't peg you for the settling type." "She's not my wife," Caleb said, his voice cold, his hand near his gun. Jericho's smile didn't waver. "Pity? A woman like that's worth more than $3. I'd wager." Caleb's heart stopped. He hadn't told a soul what he'd paid for Eliza. Jericho knew because he'd been in Red Hollow, watching from the shadows. The realization hit like a fist. Jericho wasn't here by chance. He was here for her. That night, Caleb didn't sleep. He sat by the cabin door, his rifle across his knees, listening to the wind. Eliza noticed, her eyes sharp with unspoken questions. She'd seen men like Jericho before. She knew the danger he carried. The days grew colder, the tension thicker. Caleb taught Eliza to shoot, standing close as she aimed at a target nailed to a tree. Her hands were steady, her aim deadly, but he saw the fear she buried beneath her resolve. He wanted to promise her safety, but words like that were cheap in a land where death rode on every horizon. One night, as a storm gathered in the mountains, Eliza spoke. "He's coming back, isn't he?" Caleb nodded. "Likely. Why me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Some men see something good and want to ruin it." She stepped closer, her eyes searching his. "And you? What do you see?" He met her gaze, his walls crumbling. "I see someone who fights, someone who doesn't break." Her breath hitched, and for a moment, the storm outside was nothing compared to the one between them. Then she turned away, and the moment passed, but it lingered like smoke. Jericho returned at dawn, with 3 men at his back, their faces hard and their guns gleaming. Caleb was ready, his rifle loaded, his heart steady. Eliza stood beside him, her own gun in hand, her jaw set. They faced the riders from the porch, the air thick with the promise of blood. "Hand her over, Holt," Jericho called, his voice smooth as poison. No need for this to get ugly. Caleb didn't answer. He knelt, not in surrender, but to steady his aim through the porch rail. Eliza gasped, a sharp, raw sound that cut through the silence. For a heartbeat, she thought he was giving up, bowing to Jericho's will. The realization that he was fighting, for her, for them, shook her to her core. The fight was swift and brutal. Caleb's first shot grazed Jericho's arm, a warning. The second hit one of his men in the leg, sending him howling to the ground. The others hesitated, their courage faltering. Jericho cursed, his face twisted with rage, and fired a wild shot that splintered the porch post. Eliza fired back, her bullet clipping Jericho's hat, and he froze, stunned by her nerve. "Leave." Caleb said, his voice like iron. Or you don't. Jericho spat, clutching his bleeding arm, and wheeled his horse around. His men followed, disappearing into the dust. The fight was over, but the war wasn't. Winter came, blanketing the land in snow. Jericho's shadow lingered, but he didn't return. Word reached Red Hollow that he'd been seen in a saloon, drunk and raving about revenge. But Caleb knew men like Jericho burned out fast. The real change was in the cabin, where the walls between him and Eliza were crumbling. They worked side by side, their silences comfortable now. She'd touch his arm when passing him a tool, and he'd linger when their hands brushed. One night, as the fire glowed and the wind howled, she sat close, her shoulder against his. "I thought you'd claim me that first day," she said softly. "When you knelt out there, I thought—" "I'd never claim you," Caleb said, his voice rough with feeling. "You're not something to own." She looked at him, her eyes soft but fierce. "Then what am I to you?" He took her hand, his touch careful, like he was afraid she'd break, or he would. "You're Eliza. That's enough." She leaned in, her lips brushing his, tentative at first, then surer. It wasn't a vow, not yet, but it was a promise, a slow, steady fire that had been kindling since the day he paid $3.01 to give her a choice. In the wilds of Wyoming, where the land demanded everything and gave nothing, Caleb and Eliza found something worth more than gold. A love built on trust, forged in dust and blood, and chosen freely under the endless sky.